Brian Schottenheimer was fired, and now the Seattle Seahawks are looking for a new offensive coordinator. So we're going to try to figure out who are the most likely guys to end up taking that position, Tom.
It is an interesting situation for Seattle. Now, when they moved on from Schottenheimer, they cited philosophical differences. And this came after, I think it was around 24-ish hours, maybe it was more like 48, whatever, time is a blur to me, that, Pete Carroll is Pete Carroll said Schottenheimer, he's not going anywhere. Most points in franchise history. Also came after Pete Carroll said, hey, I want to run the ball more effectively.
Okay.
I don't like this whole, we got too high coverage. I want to be able to have single high coverage. I want to run the ball more. And my fear here is that based on Pete Carroll's comments, that this is going to be a reversion. Yep. Based on what Pete Carroll had to say. This is going to be something where they're going to try to run the ball a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that worries me. I am concerned about that idea because I get it. Pete Carroll is kind of I'm going to say it, boomer mindset and wants to reset and try to run the football, and that worries me. And there's one thing that keeps sticking out of my mind before we get into our candidate list here.
Yep.
Pete Carroll had a big issue on a 4th and 1 play in the playoff game and was fighting the call, were his exact words, and they took a delay of game penalty and then punted, and because they weren't ready to call the play. And that's super concerning to me.
Yep.
So I had argued for, move on from Brian Schottenheimer because you want to unleash the passing game. My fear is it's kind of a monkey's paw thing where they do release Brian Schottenheimer and they revert back more to the running game.
Well, we will see. I'm always team let Russ cook. What should the Seahawks focus be on offense? Run or pass? Type R for run, type P for pass. I understand a lot of the things that you said. I understand a lot of things Pete Carroll said. You have Russell frickin' Wilson. It is P for pass. That's my vote. You also going to type P?
Yeah, it should be the passing game.
Okay.
It's 2021.
Come
on.
Let's now get into our Schottenheimer replacements at number 10. Doug Pederson, who was just fired by the Eagles.
He is from Washington State, so there is some local connection there. As you mentioned, out as the Eagles head coach. He reportedly didn't like being told what to do, which is part of the Eagles' dysfunction there. And that's why he's like, I'm fine to be gone. I think it was kind of a long year for Doug Pederson. I would not be surprised if he took you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and sit out a year. I don't really want to deal with this. I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to reset, try and get an NFL head coaching job next year. But if you want to hire someone and say, hey, maybe you just take over as our offense and give them full reins, I think Pederson would be a good hire. I don't know if it's going to be a good fit, though, for Seattle if Pete Carroll does, and I'm assuming here, want to run the football more.
At number 9, we're going to go Shane Waldron, who's pass game coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams.
Sean McVay seems to kind of have the Seahawks number a little bit.
Yep.
Now, the offense looked very different this year for McVay, especially with Jared Goff being hurt. But if you want to run an offense more like McVay, hire Shane Waldron. Now, I do want to make a note here. NFL rules changed this year.
Yep.
In years past, if a coach was under contract, teams could prevent them from interviewing for OC positions because a position coach or a passing game coordinator wasn't viewed as a step up to an OC, which, makes no sense, right? So that's changed this year. He interviewed for the Bengals head coaching job in 2018, which was weird, but whatever. OC is the logical next step. If Pete Carroll says, I want to have an offense more like McVay, I think hiring Waldron would make some sense.
Yeah, Shane Waldron would make a little bit of sense here. Let's go now to number 8, Mike Kafka, and this is a guy that I absolutely love. I just don't really see him moving on from the Chiefs.
All right, number 8, again, Kafka here. I am very curious to see what they end up doing here in terms of the Chiefs. Like, are they going to get to keep Eric Bieniemy? Are they going to get to keep Kafka too? If Kafka gets to be an OC for Kansas City, he's not going anywhere. If he gets to be a head coach, maybe for Philadelphia, he's not going to take the Seahawks OC job. This is someone I would absolutely put an interview request for, but I'm very curious to see what route they end up going. Like, I would like for them to interview him. I'm not convinced he's going to be the guy who ends up leaving, though.
No, I'm with you. So those are our top 3, or we're about to get into some more candidates here for the Seattle Seahawks. Who do you want as the Seahawks OC? We're going to make this the pinned comment on today's video. So when you're getting hit with that YouTube ad break, I want you to scroll on down and let us know who do you want as the Seahawks OC. I misspoke there. Now we're getting into our top 7. Those are our bottom 3 candidates. Alec Van Pelt at number 7.
This is an intriguing idea to me because I think it could be a good enough hybrid of what Pete Carroll deep down wants to do and what a more modern NFL offense looks like. I think the Kevin Stefanski offense can work in the NFL. I really think it can. Alex Van Pelt has very little play calling experience. I thought he called a pretty good game in the playoffs.
He looked really freaking good. Putting up 48 seems good to me.
There's been a lot more buzz in terms of, hey, maybe Russell Wilson, he does deserve some blame for this because he's not great in the short area. And I think part of that is because he's a little bit undersized. And reality is, it's tougher to see over big linemen in the short area of the field. It's not an issue deep downfield. But if you want to run the ball a little bit more, utilize that Stefanski, almost Shanahan-style offense, hire an unexperienced play caller, which I think I'm okay with, and someone who's worked with, frankly, like Baker Mayfield's best case scenario, right, is Russell Wilson. And the Browns have made Baker look pretty decent.
Yeah.
And helped them look pretty decent, I should say. So I think from that perspective, go interview Alex Van Pelt. I think I'm trying to meet you halfway here, Pete. A little bit more modern, but you can still run the football as well.
Let's go to Marcus Brady at number 6 in our Schottenheimer replacements, quarterback coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, OC, by the way, in the CFL. He played in the CFL for a very long time. He was mentioned as a target by The Athletic. They also threw in names like Jay Gruden, which I was intrigued by.
Really?
I kind of wonder if Brady is going to get a lot of buzz this cycle. I think the offense has been pretty decent for Indianapolis. Now, when he took over as the quarterback's coach, his first year was actually as an assistant quarterback coach. Colts didn't have one because the year before they had just lost someone named Brian Schottenheimer.
Sure.
I think that's at least worth mentioning there.
At number 5, we got Anthony Lynn here for our Schottenheimer replacements, who was just let go by the Los Angeles Chargers after, I'll be honest, I thought he was going to be able to keep his job after winning his last 4 games.
I'm glad he didn't there. I like Anthony Lynn, though, as an offensive guy. Now, he is a little bit more in the Pete Carroll style of we want to run the football, right? He is respected by players and coaches. Lynn has a lot of background working with running backs in the NFL. If you don't retain Chris Carson, someone like an Anthony Lynn might help you maximize your upside in terms of getting more out of different backs who, frankly, if you lose Chris Carson, aren't going to be as good. But if you can bring in Lynn as your play caller, I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, I like Anthony Lynn.
We've seen him work with mobile quarterbacks, too, both in Buffalo and L.A.
I mean, I want a coach that's very highly respected, and I also want a coach that can match Pete Carroll's fieriness and can match Pete Carroll's chemistry or meet. What's the word I'm looking for? He needs to be on the same page as a Pete Carroll, and I think that's what you're going to be able to get out of a guy like Anthony Lynn. So, Anthony Lynn, he's number 5. Let's now go to number 4 on our list, Dave Canales.
This is a pure Pete Carroll promotion style, right? Like, he has been with Pete Carroll since 2009 with USC and Seattle, has slowly worked his way up the ranks, began as, I think, an assistant strength coach. Yep. He's still on what I call the right side of 40. Again, worked his way up. He did interview, by the way, for the Vanderbilt offensive coordinator position. This one kind of feels a little bit like an internal, I don't want to use the word puppet hire, but something along those types of lines there. Although if Pete Carroll didn't like the passing game this year, maybe the passing game coordinator offense isn't the route that they really want to go.
Now, we want to know in the comments section, what is your confidence level in head coach Pete Carroll? Rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. So go down in the comments, let us know. 1 being you're not confident in him whatsoever. 10 being you're very confident in him. And if you're a Seahawks fan, please go subscribe to our Seahawks channel. It's youtube.com/SeahawksTV.
Number 3 on our list, Pep Hamilton here. He has coached in the NFL and the XFL. And oh, look, Mitch, another example of the fired Chargers Football Coaches Association.
I mean, Pep Hamilton's a good quarterback coach. I mean, he is one of the most touted, I'd say, QB minds, if you will. Also did a great job with Justin Herbert. I know, probably Anthony Lynn got a lot of credit, but I think Pep Hamilton deserves a lot of credit. And you're looking at a guy who's coached in the NFL, coached in college, coached in the XFL. Mm-hmm. That's the type of guy that I want. Working with somebody like Russell Wilson, because also, man, the Seahawks, they have this strange offensive chemistry. They have this strange offensive game plan, which reminds me a lot of a college game style. So Pep Hamilton, he's number 3. If you guys want daily videos, subscribe today. We're pumping out content literally every single day, and where it's 100% free. So if you're always finding yourself looking for more videos, we got you covered. Look at that big red button underneath this video and hit it today. That way you don't miss a thing. At number 2 in our Schottenheimer replacements, we got Mike McDaniel.
I am very intrigued by what happens with McDaniel this offseason. If you really want to run the football, go hire a Kyle Shanahan protege. Those are my rules, because you get to run the football if you're Kyle Shanahan. Because it always works. Like, that is acceptable as far as I'm concerned. If you want to run the ball for 3 yards a carry, we got to have a whole different conversation there. Now, he's been linked to joining a possible Robert Saleh staff. So in the event that happens, a name I didn't include, but we just heard word of a little bit of buzz around him, like right before we started filming this.
Yep.
Tony Elliott, the Clemson OC.
Okay.
Sign me up. I'd be all for it. I think he's a little bit more modern, a little bit more basic as well with his play calling, a lot of RPOs, but I like that. I think that would work really well for Seattle. But if you're going to focus on running the football, I think Mike McDaniel, or even the passing game coordinator for San Francisco, Mike LaFleur, it also makes some sense there. Like, I think those are all pretty solid options.
So who's the number 1 candidate to replace Brian Schottenheimer? At number 1, it's Shane Steichen.
Got that last name right there. Good job, Mitch. He was immediately linked, by the way, to this job once it came open. Like maybe within like an hour. Not even. It was like 30 minutes of, hey, they fired Schottenheimer. Shane Steichen immediately got linked to this position, which I'm like, okay, that is clearly worthy of being high on this list. Now, the argument, by the way, like the pitch for, this is why that he should be hired, was based around running the football. Again, Pete Carroll, right? The Chargers, though, did not run the ball well.
Not at all.
Now, part of that was because they were banged up on the offensive line and they lost Austin Eckler. But if you want to use EPA, I know, nerd numbers, guys, bear with me. They were 22nd in the NFL. You want to use DVOA, also nerd numbers, but a different style there, 31st. Don't love that one. Maybe it makes the numbers were a little bit higher because of lesser competition. That's what DVOA seems to indicate right there. But he's only 35. So he looks older than 35 if we're being honest here. But because he was so quickly linked to this potential job, I had to include him at number 1 on this list just because there's a lot going on there. I'm sure we'll do an updated list at some point as well. But this is kind of an important hire for Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, Dave. This is now OC number 3 as of late. Darrell Bevell was fired. They moved on from, of course, from just now Brian Schottenheimer. So they have a lot of tricky decisions here to try and make a decision on in terms of what they end up going. And I think most importantly, figuring out what the offense is going to look like.
Yeah,
that's pivotal.
Yeah, I
mean, that's your number 1 thing. We brought it up earlier. They have got to find a way to focus a little bit more on the passing game and maximizing that than just trying to run the football over and over again.